Hello everyone, welcome to another session of Prime S4 demo series on S4 HANA. Today the topic is CO2 calculation framework in SAP TM for calculation for sustainable logistics. So I'm Bimal Shrabakumar, uh, based out of Denver, Colorado, and I am with Shobita from Atlanta, Georgia, and Shivashankari from Hyderabad, India. In today's session, we are going to showcase two sales orders with 150 kilogram and 200 kilogram, and of products in it. Both will create a freight unit. Uh, Same one freight unit for each sales order for this demo purpose. Using optimizer planning, we combine these sales orders into a freight order, and it will uh, pick up a low emission vehicle based on the planning profiles and cost constraint settings we maintain for sustainable logistics and CO2 emission. And we create a freight order, and the carrier will be selected. Once the carrier is selected, we put it into execution. We showcase what is the CO2 value calculated in kilograms for the entire shipment. And we can also report uh, the emission value manually. In real scenarios, it can be reported from an external system. So this showcases we can have a planned value and actual value depending upon the situation. And then we will set the freight order into execution, or and set it to completed by reporting the last expected event. And we will also showcase how the CO2 value calculated is distributed across different freight units and subsequently to the sales order and material. In this way, we can trace the CO2 emission per sales order or deliveries or per material in a shipment. Some of the advantages of having the CO2 calculator is like we can use optimizer in SAP TM and choose the lowest emission vehicle that can reduce the overall cost of the shipment, and its eco-friendly business operations can be uh, managed and reported out. We can monitor the emissions by route and carrier and vehicle type. And we can also use external system to calculate the actual cost CO2 emission in case there is any changes in the way that we calculate. And then we can compare between plan and actual and improve our internal calculation. We get a better CO2 emission visibility in cockpits and others to see how much it is, how much of CO2 is calculated for that shipment. And we can have green route optimization and also freight cost control, because some of these CO2 emissions can be costlier. Also, please note that just because it is CO2 does not mean that other emissions cannot be calculated. What in the industry, what we do is something called CO2 equivalent. For example, if nitrogen gases or carbon monoxides are emitted, we can have a CO2 equivalent for that. So based on that, all the parameters are maintained inside the SAP TM configuration to get the CO2 equivalent for the emissions. Now, before we jump into the system, over to you, Shobita, to showcase the calculation, that how the calculation will be done for this demo, and then Shiva Shankri will showcase it in the system. Over to you, Shobita.
Thanks, Bimal. Now, let's walk through how CO2 emission are calculated and captured in SAP TM. CO2 emission for the vehicle details are configured in vehicle or equipment type. Payload weight with the UOM also updated in the vehicle equipment type. CO2 emission is used as a cost factor in planning profile so that the optimizer will select the vehicle with the low CO2 emission. The system uses a distance weight based calculation method to calculate CO2 emission for each stage in the road freight order based on the predefined formula EMT plus E full minus EMT into W load max divided by W max load into distance, where EMT, E full, and W load max values are configured at the vehicle type. Here for the demo for EMT, which is an empty vehicle, we have used 0.01 kg per kilometer In the vehicle type, ZPS EL, and for E full, it is a fully loaded vehicle. We have used 0.03 kg, and W max load is a payload weight which is defined in the vehicle type. That is, for the demo, we have used 10,000 kg. W load is the low weight of the freight order from the sales order 1 and 2. It is 350 kg, and the distance traveled from the start to the destination location, it is 2340 kilometers from Texas to California. Upon the planning, the CO2 emission can be viewed directly on the CO2 emission tab, and we can also report the CO2 emission from the external system. Now, upon the successful execution of the CO2, the CO2 emission values are allocated at the product level for each freight unit based on the item weight. Here, for the freight unit 1, it is 10.2 kg, and for the freight unit 2, it is 13.6 kg. Now, let's see the live demo by Shivashankari. Over to you, Shivashankari.
Let us start the demo by creating two sales orders for the same customer but with different weight. I'm going to create it with a reference. Let's copy it. Here we can give the customer reference. 150 kgs is the total weight here. Now let us save it. I'm going to create another sales document. $200 kgs is the total weight here. We can view the freight units under the TM status tab. Now, let us plan these freight units into a freight order. We can see that there are two transportation vehicle resources being maintained here. One is an electric vehicle resource and the other is a normal vehicle resource. Since we are opting for an optimizer based planning, the system will prioritize the electric vehicle resource. This is because emission factor is considered as a cost parameter by the system. Now let us save this. So the carrier has been automatically assigned. We can also able to view the calculated CO2 emissions for each individual freight order at the cockpit level itself. Now let us open this freight order. Here we can see that the electric vehicle resource is the resource opted by the system. And this is the total distance traveled. So this is the new feature introduced by SAP where we can view the calculated CO2 emissions. And also we can manually enter the reported CO2 emissions here. Before that, we need to set the execution status as ready for transportation execution. Now let us save it. We can get the reported CO2 emissions from the external resources. And we can give the unit of measure here. So let's save it. Now we can report the events. Unload end is the event which is being maintained at the freight order type as the last expected event. So let's give the same event here at the customer location. So let's save it. So upon the successful execution of the document, CO2 emission values from the freight order is allocated to the freight unit items based on the distance and the weight of the freight units. So let's open each freight units. We can check this at the freight units item level by selecting this product. Here we have CO₂ emissions. So 10.20 kgs is the calculated CO₂ emissions for this freight unit. Now let us check the other freight unit. Here it is 13.6 kgs. So altogether it will be around 23.8 kgs. So this is how the calculated emissions are being allocated for each individual freight units based on their weight and the distance. So this brings us to the conclusion of this demo. Thank you for joining us. For further queries, please contact Prime S4.